Now, the research priorities, I've got quite a lot of research priorities, and I think mobile assessment is one of them, because if you assess something, you can learn. Collaborative learning, communication and learning, I think we've heard in the keynote as well, communication is very important. Calculation, to use a mobile device for calculation purposes and so on, I think those are almost the 4 C's, where we say collaboration, comprehension, and communication. I think the device can be used for that. And research on those issues is important. Location-based learning, I think, is important. Healthcare is going to be another thing that's going to pitch up. And then open source, obviously, the Android phone and all those kind of things. And lastly, gaming. I think if we start to use games in teaching and learning by playing, I think that's the way to go.
So the question is, what are our priority areas for research, for future research? I think it's interesting to think about that, because on the one hand, it's what is interesting today, and on the other hand, what is important to research. And I think you always have to try and find an overlap between the two. So I try and look at areas where it's interesting and it's important to do research. So I think language learning is extremely important to research, because going beyond the kind of the discipline of learning a language itself to enhancing human communication, there's that broader remit really for language learning, which is why I think it's important. And why it's interesting is because mobile technology can really, I think, transform language learning. I don't think it's doing it at the moment, but I think it can. And so trying to understand the ways in which it can really change language learning is the research question. Looking at what evidence we have of mobile learning being transformative, and then looking at sort of synthesizing and reviewing the research in the field to see, are we really doing something that's changing language learning fundamentally? And I think it does need changing.
Priority research topics. I mean, I guess if we just look at the mobile learning research community in isolation or as an entity on its own, then I worry about either the mentality that works with projects that are small-scale, fixed-term and not sustained, or I worry about why those projects. So why should we be doing them? And on the other hand, if we do them, why don't they sustain? What is it we don't understand about the environment, the hosts, the institutions, the people who aren't researchers, who aren't research subjects, in order that there is a kind of greater momentum, continuity, and maybe social usefulness. So that my research will be about research, if you see what I mean.
Oh yeah.
My research will be about why isn't research working.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best thing. But I guess also I worry that the research community comes from a particular set of disciplines, computing, psychology, maybe in particular kind of AI or cognitive sciences, and education. And so maybe the answer, another part of the answer is actually, well, what disciplines are we missing? And do those disciplines account for our failure to embed our work? So should we be looking at information systems or sociology? Should our priority be more permeability to those disciplines in the hope of getting a better understanding of the environment we work in, rather than just the specifics of our particular innovations around education and technology?
I would like to see a research which is to the area of collaboration and peer-to-peer support in mobile learning, so that what are the ways how we can digitalize the process in a way that children are helping each other, asking questions with their mobile phones in this mobile learning environment. Because if we widen the collaboration to be global, so that school children in Finland can help children in South Africa, how can we digitalize that. We know that it can happen if teachers are nominating weekly tutors and there are some incentives for these children. But how can we put some incentives embedded to the service that children will announce that I'm quite good in fractions. I can be the tutor for this week. And then I get something via this mobile learning service. So research for this collaborative area.
The priority research topics, I think sticking to the same theme too, that we really do need to try and do some research on some of the new technologies and how they're going to play out in connection with those learning theories. So taking that next level, and again back to like Meger's media selection model, how do we take that into the current state, into the current day, and make it so that we can have things like apps and peripherals and a web all be applied correctly according to that, with using that same model that's been proven, but with these new technologies, peripherals, what are the other components that could make up a holistic learning solution rather than just focusing on the device itself, and that's it.